For most of human history, winter was not an inconvenience. It was an apex predator. It killed entire tribes. It froze children in their sleep. It picked off the old and the weak in a single brutal night. And for tens of thousands of years, our ancestors had to face it without houses, without furnaces, without coats, without matches, without grocery stores, without electricity, without doctors. And somehow, they survived. Not all of them, but enough. Enough to give rise to every human alive today. And what they did to survive is, frankly, some of the strangest, darkest, and most extraordinary behavior in the entire history of our species. You would not believe some of it. Even now, archaeologists studying the evidence have to pause and double-check, because what they are looking at is so grim that the brain refuses to accept it at first. So let us go back to the Ice Age. Around 30,000 years ago, northern Europe and northern Asia were frozen wastelands. Glaciers covered most of what is now England, Germany, and Scandinavia. The temperature in winter regularly dropped to 40 or 50 degrees below freezing. The wind was constant. The sun, when it appeared, gave almost no warmth. There were no trees in many regions, just open tundra, with mammoths, woolly rhinos, cave bears, and small bands of humans scraping out an existence on the edge of survival. And in those bands of humans, survival came down to one thing: heat. If you could keep heat inside your body, you lived. If you could not, you died. Within hours. So the first thing they did was the obvious thing. They wore the skin of other animals. But not in the way you are picturing. The classic image of a caveman wearing a single ragged fur draped over his shoulders is wildly inaccurate. Real Ice Age clothing was extraordinarily sophisticated. In 1991, a body was discovered melting out of a glacier in the Alps. He had been buried in the ice for over 5,000 years. They called him Ötzi the Iceman, and when scientists examined his clothing, they were astonished. He was wearing a coat made from sheep and goat hide, with the fur turned inward, leggings made from goat leather, sewn together with fine animal sinew, a bearskin cap with leather straps, shoes with bear fur on the inside for warmth, deerskin on top for waterproofing, and a complex woven grass lining that wicked away moisture. He even had a grass cloak, layered for insulation. This was not a primitive man wearing a single bear pelt. This was a man wearing what amounted to a custom-tailored, multi-layered, technical cold-weather suit, 5,000 years ago, with materials he had hunted, processed, sewn, and engineered with no tools you would recognize. Ancient humans were brilliant. Their clothing reflects intelligence comparable to modern outdoor engineering. But Ötzi lived after the Ice Age. The humans who came before him faced something even harsher. In the deep Ice Age, our ancestors went further. They sewed clothing tightly to their bodies. They used multiple layers, the way modern climbers do. They invented the eye needle, a small piece of bone with a hole drilled through it for thread, around 40,000 years ago. This invention, this tiny sliver of carved bone, is one of the most important objects in human history. Because without it, our ancestors could not have made the close-fitted clothing that allowed them to survive temperatures that would have killed them in any draped pelt. The needle let them sew. Sewing let them dress. Dressing let them live. And here is where the story starts to get strange. Because clothing was not enough. Not nearly enough. A 40-below winter night will kill you in your sleep even if you are dressed warmly, unless you have something else. Something more. So they invented the next thing. Fire. And not just any fire. Fire became sacred. In some communities, it became more important than family. Anthropologists studying ancient settlements have found hearths that were continuously maintained for decades, even centuries. The fire was never allowed to go out. Generations of humans, taking shifts, feeding the flame day and night, season after season, because if it died, they might die with it. There are accounts from indigenous communities in the Arctic, recorded in the 19th century, where the firekeeper, almost always a woman, would carry a slow-burning ember inside a small clay pot when the tribe moved between camps. If the ember died, restarting fire from scratch in sub-zero, wet conditions was so difficult that it could mean death for the entire group. So she walked, sometimes for days, with the survival of her people glowing softly in her hands. But even fire was not enough. Fire warms you on the outside. It does not warm you on the inside. And when the temperature drops far enough, the body loses heat faster than even a roaring fire can replace it. So ancient humans had to do something else. They had to find ways to generate heat from within. And this is where things start to get genuinely strange. Their first solution was fat. Massive amounts of dietary fat. In the cold latitudes, ancient diets were not just heavy in meat. They were extreme. The Inuit, who lived in some of the harshest cold on Earth, consumed up to 70% of their calories from animal fat. Whale blubber, seal fat, caribou marrow, bear lard, things that would clog the arteries of a modern person almost overnight. But in the Arctic, this was the only way to maintain core temperature through a winter that lasted 6 months. The body burns fat slowly, releasing heat continuously, like a furnace running on slow fuel. Lean meat would not work. Vegetables, which were almost non-existent in the Arctic anyway, would not work. Only fat. So they ate fat by the handful, frozen, raw, by the slab. And their bodies adapted. Studies of ancient Arctic populations have found a genetic mutation, the CPT1A gene, which allows for extreme processing of dietary fat, that became widespread in human populations that live through Ice Age cold. We literally evolved a metabolism designed to survive a diet of pure fat. But here is where the story starts to turn dark. Because fat had to come from somewhere. And in the worst winters, there was no fat to be had. The animals had migrated. The fish had vanished beneath the ice. The berries were gone. The roots were frozen. And the choice the ancient humans faced was simple and terrible. Eat, somehow, or die. So they ate things that no human should ever eat. They ate hides. They boiled the leather of their own clothing in pots of water until it softened, just to extract the last calories from the proteins in animal skin. Records of starving Arctic explorers and indigenous peoples describe this practice across multiple cultures. They ate bones. They smashed every bone in a carcass into pieces and boiled them for hours, releasing collagen, marrow fat, and minerals into a thick broth that could keep a family alive for days. There is a reason bone broth has been a survival food in every cold climate on Earth. It was, sometimes, the last thing between a person and starvation. They ate insects that lived in tree bark. They ate the inner bark of certain trees, like pine and birch, which contains carbohydrates and nutrients. There are entire indigenous Sami words for the specific kinds of pine bark eaten during famine years. They ate lichen. The lichen that grows on rocks in subarctic conditions is technically edible if processed correctly, and ancient peoples found ways to make it palatable. They ate moss. They ate dirt when it contained the right minerals. And then, in the worst years, in the worst winters, they did the thing nobody wants to talk about. There is archaeological evidence, hard, indisputable, scattered across multiple Ice Age sites in Europe, that ancient humans sometimes ate other humans. Cannibalism. Not always, not everywhere, and not casually. But in some communities, during the worst famines, when every other option had been exhausted, when the alternative was the death of the entire tribe, the bones of the dead were broken open for their marrow. Skulls were polished and reused as cups. Some of these skulls are now in museums. The cut marks on the bones are identical to the marks left when butchering deer. Some of these sites are over 15,000 years old. Others are much, much older. This was not common. It was not normal. But it happened. And it happened in moments when every survival strategy had failed and the choice was unspeakable. Some of these bones belonged to children. Some belonged to elders. Some belonged to family members who had already died of cold or hunger. Archaeologists studying these sites have noted, almost universally, that the bones show signs of ritual handling. The dead were not just food. They were grieved over. Their bones were sometimes painted, decorated, kept. The act of survival, in the deepest cold, was twisted together with mourning. We do not know what they told themselves in those moments. We do not know what stories they passed to their children. But we know they survived. And those children, descended from people who endured the unendurable, are us. There is one more thing. Cold did not just shape what they ate. It shaped who they became. In communities that lived through repeated cold winters, social bonds tightened. The selfish were exiled or simply died first. The generous, the patient, the cooperative, the ones who shared the last piece of meat with a hungry neighbor, survived because their neighbors survived, and that meant the group survived. Selfishness in summer is annoying. Selfishness in winter is death. So winter, over thousands of years, selected for a particular kind of human. Not the strongest, Not the fastest, but the most cooperative, the most trustworthy, the most willing to give. Some anthropologists believe that many of the social emotions we now consider deeply human, gratitude, loyalty, the urge to share food, the impulse to comfort the cold and the hungry, were sharpened and refined by 10,000 years of surviving winters together. We are warm to each other now, in part, because for a long time, we were the only warmth we had. So tonight, when you turn the heat on with the touch of a button, or pull a blanket over yourself, or eat something hot from a bowl, or hug somebody you love, remember that every one of those small comforts is built on the back of an unimaginably hard road. Somewhere in your bloodline, there is a person who carried fire across the snow. Somewhere there is a person who boiled their own boots to feed their child. Somewhere there is a person who made an impossible choice in the worst winter of their life, and lived, and kept walking, and kept being human, and passed everything they were down through the generations until it reached you. They didn't know any of this, but now you do.